presentation is...
As she has already mentioned, we are 3 of us, and I'm here to do the introductory bit of it. That is the title, as well as the subtitle, which is our focus of discussion this evening. Next slide, please. This one is a brief plan of what we are going to do. Mine is introduction, and then Professor will talk about Ubuntu, natural law and human rights in the context of Asia. And then Friar will tell us the truth at the end of it. Next slide, please. So we start, as the Dean has mentioned, with definition. Lawyers like to start with definition, so we start with definition. And what definition is based on Professor Martha Nussbaum. Nussbaum spent a bit of time in Africa, and he gave a very good definition, you know, like an outsider looking from the side. Sometimes an outsider can have a better look than an insider. So what he said is, Ubuntu is the capacity in African culture to express compassion, reciprocity, dignity, harmony, and humanity in the interest of building and maintaining community with justice and mutual caring. So we decided to go to Martha because other people already defined Ubuntu, so we didn't want to add. We didn't want to repeat. So Martha adds that, this is Nussbaum, Professor adds that, the hallmark of Ubuntu is about listening to and affirming others with the help of processes that create trust, fairness, shared understanding, and dignity and harmony in relationships. So to her, Ubuntu consciousness is about the desire to build a caring, sustainable, and just response to the community, whether that it is the community, a village, a city, nation, or global family. So to her, Ubuntu is something universal. A Nussbaum definition can be, it is actually affirmed by the late Desmond Tutu. Tutu says, in Africa, recognition of our interdependence is called Ubuntu. It is the essence of being human. It speaks of the fact that my humanity is caught up and is inextricably bound up in yours. I'm human because I belong to the whole, to the community, to the ethnic group, to the nation, to the earth. Ubuntu, according to him, is about wholeness, about compassion for life. So I think this is a very good definition. Then a guy down there in South Africa, Beja, I hope he's around, he mentioned about human dignity. So he connected Ubuntu, just like Nussbaum and the late Tutu said, the emphasis here is about human dignity. Even Professor Frimpong from Ghana mentioned something very similar to this. And Beja said, this human dignity is based on chapter 2 of the South African Constitution. And this chapter is akin to our chapter 4. And more so on the maxim that everyone has inherent dignity and the right to have their dignity respected and protected. So this is our concept of Ubuntu. And this concept rhymes with the work of St. John the 23rd in the document Pacem in Terris, peace on earth. He said, any human society, if it is to be well-ordered and productive, must lay down as a foundation this principle. namely that every human being is a person. That is, human nature is endowed with intelligence and free will. Indeed, precisely because one is a person, one has rights and obligations flowing directly and simultaneously from one's very nature. To us, this is Ubuntu in its universal sense. Next slide, please. The green one, we know that other people already spoken about it, so we don't want to waste your time on it. Now, my sister, Professor Prema, takes over from me. Welcome, Professor Prema.
Thank you. Vanakkam, everyone. It is our tradition to greet everyone. Thank you, Dr. Andy Cons and Dr. Mathias, and also the organizers who gave an opportunity for me to present the paper. This topic was actually proposed by Dr. Andy Cons, and it was quite interesting. So I'll just jump on to the presentation from my part, where I have discussed Ubuntu, natural law and human rights in Asian context, specifically India, and the findings of Mahatma Gandhi ji. So he is a person who is called as father of India, and he is a political leader. He's a freedom fighter who fought for the nation. And apart from that, he also very deeply observed the society, the existence of the society, how people behave, and how it is going to be. And he has also spent his few of the years in African nation, where he had observed many of the violations which happened and experienced by people there under slavery. So when Gandhi returned back to India, he also observed a similar kind of colonial control over India. And he also observed, based on religion culture, there were also a few of the superstitious beliefs and also discriminations prevailing in the society. So he observed many of the things, as the presentation shows here. Gandhian philosophy learned in South Africa narrates that the human values and not the market should govern our lives. So against communism, where it is going to be economy which dominates the society is restricted, and he just suppresses that thought in the society, and he want to just make human as first to consider. And as the presentation shows here, the last point here, where Gandhi maintained that wealth is to be used judiciously, governed by the principle of each according to his needs, and all forms of inequality had to be cured at all levels. And very interestingly, this particular magazine, which talks about Harijan is going to be one of a community, caste, which is going to be the lower caste who still now suffer in the Indian society. For instance, these Harijan people, the so-called Harijan people, who are going to be considered as scheduled caste people, are being involved in manual scavenging in the modern way. So this is a violation. And this particular magazine, which focuses the deprived person, where it is going to be stating Gandhi's statement that amassing or hoarding of wealth above and beyond one's legitimate requirement is theft, right? If you are hungry, you can have one piece of bread or 2 pieces of bread. Since it is 10 pieces of bread, it doesn't mean that we have to eat everything. We have to share with people who have to be, who is poor, and we have to choose people who are in a need. So as like Ubuntu's principles, which is going to be reflecting in many of the Asian states, Gandhi gave us the idea of trusteeship, whereby the individual is a trustee of his or her earnings, and the same must be shared with all shareholders, the community, he means. And where it continues, the society is based on collectivity and not an individual need, right? So this is where the class theory, which is going to be reflecting, and where people are rich and rich and rich, and they don't consider about the poor people. But the context of Ubuntu, where the modern, it is reflecting in the human rights perspective, equality, it is going to be reflecting in natural law too. The ideas of Gandhi, right? Why we specifically took Gandhi is, he is a person who had observed the violations happened in the colonial countries like Africa and also India. And he is a deep cultured who believes in Hinduism, but respected the other religion which is prevailing as Islam. The brotherhood also he established. At his last end of his death, he just professed that. So where it is going to be the labor context also, take from them according to their capacity and give according to their needs. So this is a specific one. And finally, where Gandhi's way of ensuring social justice, equality, and creation of peaceful society was people-centric. So Gandhi's life cannot be divided into sphere like social, political, economic, moral, and religious sector. If one part of the society suffers, all part of the society suffers. This is also Ubuntu, which is equal to natural law and human rights. So finally, I just want to explain where Gandhi was a visionary. He could see that if you interpret development as merely monetary or financial growth and ignore other aspects of life, you will end up in living with rife capitalism, resulting in inequality. So inequality will prevail if we are not going to consider other people's need and expectation. So capitalism is unethical because the way it allows accumulation of wealth, and it just violates the individual human rights. So finally, I end my presentation where the United Nations Development Plan, it also talked about in 2019, the report said that think beyond income, beyond average, and beyond today to remove the inequality in human development in 21st century, which is set to drive the progress of humanity. Thank you everyone for giving me the opportunity.
Now, Dr. Mathias takes over.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are. We are looking at Ubuntu and natural law plus human rights under the title of universalism, because they are not restricted to a particular community or society. And this Ubuntu, natural law, and human rights, from the presentations we have had so far up to now, from the beginning, we can say that they represent the essence of a human person. And this we are calling the human dignity. Some have called it humanity. Human dignity, by its very nature, is universal. It is innate, it is inherent to all peoples, and binds every human being. It is attributed to the human person by nature, not agreement. It is a common denominator to all peoples. It applies to all peoples, and it has a trans-historical and a trans-cultural validity. There is no culture you can go to that lacks human dignity. Strauss said that it is trans-historical, trans-social, trans-moral, and trans-religious. It cuts across all the whole society, the global village. Universalism is best understood as a necessary way of revealing a sense of unity, a way of imagining the fundamental equality between human beings. That's a quotation from Cheniro, who wrote her book in 2013. When we talk about universalism, it's helping us to address, understand, and offer solutions to some questions regarding socio-cultural variations, historical changes, and normative disagreement. Under socio-cultural variation, we see that different human groups do things and organize themselves differently. For example, greeting is a value across all cultures, but it is done differently. I remember, as an example, one day I went to a community here around in Nairobi, and I was in their sitting room. Whoever was coming was passing by, and I was waiting for them to greet me, and they didn't greet me. Afterwards, they complained that Father is not greeting us. For me, for them, in their culture, it is the one they find who is to greet. For me, where I was raised, a visitor doesn't greet the owner of the home. If you do, you are afraid. Why are you afraid? They will be asking. It is them to greet you. So while greeting is universal, it is applied differently. Historical changes can happen. While the views and institutions do not remain the same throughout, they go on evolving. Right now, we are talking about the new normal. 3 years ago, we would not have a meeting or a congress like this the way we are having it. We would have been all together, but people are everywhere. Like just this presentation, I'm here in Strathmore, and is somewhere outside in Nairobi. Professor Prema is in India, and we are presenting the same thing. So historical changes can bring a lot of things like COVID-19 has brought. Normative disagreements. Different groups value things differently and justify them to justify why they do what they do. Like dressing decently. All of us want to dress decently, but we don't dress the same way because we have a different understanding of what it means to dress decently. If you bring a Maasai person here, to dress decently will mean something. If you bring somebody from somewhere else, you get what I mean. Somebody to be maybe well-dressed, you need to have a suit. Someone will need maybe, they have different attires that make us decent. Variations are there, despite the universality of human dignity. Natural law is universal in space and time. That it is the fundamental structure of the human person, that which forms the human beings. It is invariable itself and universal. When you analyze this, you'll see that the original concepts are absolutely universal. They don't change. Just like the value of greeting when we meet people. That one doesn't change, but the way we greet is done differently. So the concept remains the same. What changes are the subsequent precepts. These are relatively universal, and they depend on the historical situation and they change with the changes in historical scenarios. For example, technological changes can cause something that was illegal to become legal, and vice versa. Universal knowledge of natural law or human dignity is known by everyone. All peoples in all times recognize with regard to most basic and easily perceptible precepts. We have the inclinations from natural law that we all follow. So we cannot deny this universality. In conclusion, we have a view that Ubuntu is the same as natural law and human rights with regard to human dignity. They are all presenting human dignity, all humanity. Havada says, natural law is universal, recognizable. However, with reasons, some people cannot grasp some natural law precepts due to ignorance, error, and passions that affect their rational nature. End of quote. I'd like to stop here because we are running out of time also. And I thank you for your attention. And we have our contacts in case for further discussion.